I'm Nina Dante. Welcome to this episode of The Snake Said to the River. I recently collected some wild foxglove seeds, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to create my own seed envelope, since I'm going to need somewhere to store them until I'm ready to use them in my garden. This is also such a nice way to give seeds away as gifts. I love the promise and mystery of a sealed envelope, and they're such useful objects to be able to construct, so I'm looking forward to taking you through my process. If you're not wanting to reinvent the wheel and make this template from scratch, you can download my template directly off of my website, so I'll link to that in the description box. Let's get into it. The first thing I need to do is create a template so that I can make as many of these envelopes as I want without having to remeasure everything every time. First, I'm drawing out the shape of the finished envelope. I'm going for a height of 2.5 inches and a width of 2 inches. Now I can get started on the flaps, which is where things get a little trickier. I'll start with the side flaps, and I'm going to need them to overlap when they're folded in, so they each need to be somewhere between 2/3 or 3/4 the length of the envelope width. I'm going with 1.25 inches. Now for the height. While the height on the inner edge of the flap is 2.5 inches, I'm going to taper the outer edge of the flap down to 2 inches, which means that both the upper edge and the lower edge has to taper in by 1/4 inch. You'll notice that I don't start tapering right at the inner edge of the flap because I like to leave those inner edges squared. It just makes the envelope more secure. So I'm starting the taper about 1/8 of an inch out from the lower and upper edge. Once that first flap is finished, recreate the entire process on the opposite side of the template. Now for the lower flap. We're going to use the same exact process that we used for the side flaps, but with different proportions. For the height of the lower flap, I've chosen 3/4 of an inch. The upper edge, the width, will be 2 inches, but I want that lower edge to taper down to 1.5 inches. So I'll be tapering in each of the side edges by 1/4 of an inch, remembering to leave the inner corners squared by starting that taper 1/8 of an inch in. Last of all, and my favorite part, is the upper flap. This one's a little bit different from the other flaps because it is going to taper into a point. So what I'm doing is first finding the midpoint of the line that marks the top of the envelope, and then I'm marking 1 inch height up from there, which is the height that I've chosen for this upper flap. After I square my inner edges by 1/8 of an inch, I taper each of the edges up to meet at that 1 inch point. So now that the template is complete, it's time to cut it out. To create the seed envelope that I'm going to use, I'm tracing the template onto some sturdy paper. I'm repurposing a paper grocery bag. It's the perfect paperweight, and it always feels good to reuse materials. Once it's cut out, I fold the edges in one by one. I'm using my bone folder to make a good crease, but that's not necessary. You can just use your hands. Now for gluing it all together. I start with the side folds, putting glue on the top side of one and the underside of the other. Give them a good press, and then move on to the lower flap. Lots of glue, press it well. And that's the basic envelope finished. I'm going to make a little ornamental closure for this envelope, but this step isn't necessary. You can just close the envelope up with some glue. I used my awl to make a hole toward the end of the upper flap. I've cut a good length of string and doubled it over. I trimmed a little wooden stick down. This is actually the end of an incense stick. and I'm looping the doubled over string around it to lock it in place. I threaded the loose ends of the string through a big tapestry needle and pulled it through the hole. I've triple knotted the end, and that's the ornamental closure. So now that the envelope construction is complete, I'm going to spend a little time ornamenting it. I'll also mark the plant species name and the month and year I collected it so that I can stay organized. The envelope is now complete, so it's time to enclose the foxglove seeds that I collected. I released a video last week about how to identify foxglove and how to collect its seeds, so if you're interested in watching that, I'll link to it here and in the description box. These are my foxglove seeds. They're so tiny and beautiful. Because I want this seed envelope to be really secure, I don't want to lose any seeds. I'm going to first close the envelope with a little bit of glue on that upper edge. And now I'm double securing the envelope with the ornamental closure. Safely stored until you choose to scatter the seeds in your garden. Thank you for joining me for this tutorial today. I hope it was fun and helpful. It's such a rewarding little project and makes it even more magical once you get to planting. I would love to see any of the seed envelopes that you make, so if you share anything on the socials, be sure to tag me. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel and find me on Instagram and TikTok for weekly short form videos. Until next time. Thank you.